Well, I'm going to get started before we turn it over to Preston at 11. But me and Preston have been working, we're going on our 25th year of working together, right? And it's been a fun journey. And I like to talk about this a little bit. When Preston Singletary and me started working together, there was maybe 3 contemporary native artists in this area that was working in glass. Tony Hohola, who passed away, and Marvin Oliver, who passed away, and then there was Preston Singletary. But over the years, the biggest impact has been through Blue Rain Gallery. We realized right off the bat that the medium of glass was new to the area. And we first started trying to sell Northwest Coast originals like bentwood boxes and masks and things of that nature. But people wouldn't collect it. But when it was translated in a new medium, which what Preston did, it created a whole new energy. And away we went, right? And through the years, we realized too that people liked it, but they didn't understand the process. So over the years, we brought Preston with a hot shop over here, which he'll be doing Friday and Saturday, demonstrating how glass is blown and manipulated to form. And him, Dan Friday, and Raven Sky River will be working that booth. Out here, it'll be out in the front parking lot. Part of the journey with Preston that we've had is growing or starting a glass art movement in the native art community. And when he started, like I said, there was 3 contemporary native glass artists in the Southwest. Now there's probably over 40. In fact, the Museum of Indian Art and Culture did an exhibit about 4 years ago that was released and still traveling the country today with a lot of those artists represented. The impact of Preston Singletary has been very important. He's not only an innovator in his field, he's a pioneer, but he is one of the biggest ambassadors for native glass art that's ever been. And we are honored and very proud to have worked with him. And we hope for another 20 years, I hope. If I can live that long, we'll see. But they have his influence and sharing his skill set with artists has been monumental. The other 2 artists that we have featured this week is Dan Friday, who's upstairs, this guy in the green hat, and Raven Sky River. And you'll be impressed by their works. Dan's works are all out on this side of the gallery, and we'll be bringing out Raven Sky River later today. And they're amazing. Preston and Raven and Dan are probably some of the best figurative glass artists on the market. So I'd like to encourage you to pay attention to their work. It's some fantastic work. I think I have a couple of horny toads over here by Raven Sky River behind me to the right, so that's cool. I think we're ready. Well, I'd like to introduce my friend, my brother, Preston Singletary.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here, and thank you, Leroy, for such a long and mutually beneficial relationship we've had. It was, to add to that funny story of that time, I was starting out and I got a couple of articles. I got a cover shot in Indian Artist magazine, and then Leroy calls me up and says, hey, he leaves a message on my answering machine. Hey, this is Blue Rain Gallery, it's Leroy. Yeah, we're a major gallery in Taos. We take full-page ads out in all the big magazines and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I'm getting these calls all the time because all of a sudden I'm on the map. So I call them up, and then the phone rings and rings and rings. No answer. It's like, what gallery doesn't have an answering machine on there at their place? And finally I got him on the phone, and Anyway, long story short, I did go to Taos, and it was an incredible invitation to come. And now it's been 25 years I've been coming, and I've been showing with Leroy for 24. So next year's our anniversary, whatever silver anniversary that is, or whatever. Anyways, so I'm going to try something a little different here. I've been working with the idea of new Raven stories. So you're all familiar with, Raven Stole the Sun. Maybe that's the most well-known story from the Tlingit culture. By the way, I am Tlingit. I'm Kagwantan from the eagle moiety. The killer whale is my clan symbol. And so this story is a subject of a big exhibition that I did, and it's traveling. It'll be opening up at the Idle York Museum in November, and will continue. So it's did its first run, and now it's extended the run to new museums that would like to exhibit the show. And it's an immersive experience. It sort of puts you in the story of Raven and how he went through the series of transformations, and he went to the old man, he stole the sun, and he placed it in the sky. So that's kind of a very short description of that story. It's very intricate and very long. And when I was preparing this presentation, I was going to tell you the Raven story, and then I was going to tell you 2 more stories. And I figured we're going to be here for like 2 hours, so I'm not going to do that to you. I tried to simplify the presentation. I'm working, so I've long asked the question, what is Raven up to now? Raven was the subject of all these stories in the Tlingit culture, and all of a sudden he just stopped doing things. So, of course we know that the culture was changed, interrupted, and that creativity just kind of went down to a very thin thread. And now artists are bringing it back and breathing new life into it. And so I partnered with a writer named Garth Stein, who is a very acclaimed novelist, and he wrote, maybe you know this, Art of Racing in the Rain. Has anybody ever read that one? He's a really great guy. He's also part Tlingit, so he wrote a book called Raven Stole the Moon. So we befriended each other in around 2000, and I asked him, so I created a body of work, and then he wove a story around that body of work, sort of presenting Raven and what he would be doing today if he was still around us. So I'm propagating that he is still around us, and he's some sort of spirit that is guiding. And the Raven stories, they are very random. Raven sets out to do one thing, and he fails, but he fails up. And then it becomes a domino effect, and more things happen. The world was in darkness. It was a very confusing time. People couldn't see. They couldn't find the food. There was all these problems with being in darkness. And so what I started to learn from an elder was the metaphors of the Raven stories. Like Raven brings the light, so brings the world out of darkness into the light, sort of the idea of enlightenment, self-awareness, and a whole host of other symbolisms and metaphors that are embedded in the original Raven story. So I've done my best to work with Garth on these stories, and since he's not here, he was going to be here, but I've tried to condense the story a bit and give you some new Raven stories. And so I'm going to be reading. So this is totally new for me. If I could be a filmmaker, maybe it would be better. I could do that, and I don't have to advance the slide, read, and speak it out to you. Anyway, so this is a picture I found on the internet, an unnamed ancestor from, I don't know, turn of the century in Alaska. Just kidding. This is my great-grandmother who lived to be 100 years old, and she was the one that, I'm still connected through a matrilineal connection to my great-grandmother and beyond. This is my wife, who, Åsa Sandlund, who is from Sweden, the other side of the world, and this is our family. And we have a flying dog. And I'm going to gloss over quite a big part of how I got started. And I'm not going to answer the most boring question in the world to me: how did you get started with glass? That is the one thing that so I'm here now. I'm 61 years old. I've been doing it a long time. So I've been doing it since 1982. And this is Dante Marioni's, my good friend who helped me get started. And these are my teachers. There's the two fellows here, Richard Royal and Benjamin Moore, is the team I worked on for many, many years, and where I sort of gained all of my skills through working with other artists. This is my mentor, one of my mentors, Joe David, who took me under his wing in the summer of 2000 and really helped me understand the artwork, the design styles in a very much deeper level. So here we are. This is an exhibition so this was a new, actually something I've been pondering for many years, this idea of the new Raven stories. So I'm going to start reading, so bear with me and I hope this works. So Raven fell asleep and started dreaming like only Raven can. He dreamed of the waters, clean and cold. He dreamed of the animals. He dreamed of the world as it was before it turned on itself with contempt and tore itself apart. He dreamt of the before world with music and people, generous and humble people. Raven dreamed. Raven woke up from his dream and realized much time had passed. He had been asleep for a long time. He opened his eyes and saw tall buildings. When did all this happen? He blinked his eyes and he saw tall trees. He remembered the longhouses. We know what Raven knows. The dream world and the waking world are not so far apart. Sometimes Raven can be in one world and accidentally step into the other world. And that's no good because Raven makes all kinds of mischief when he brings the dream world with him. Raven likes mischief. So Raven emerges again and he starts to look around the world. People see Raven and they exclaim, "Raven, you've come back to us. There's so many things have happened. Our salmon come from farms and is genetically modified. Our fruit is sprayed with chemicals and it's lost its flavor. And the snow crabs. The white man says there's a heat wave in the ocean, which is something only the white man can proclaim." Raven was not ready to fix the world. He was hungry and he had grown a whole new set of feathers. Raven saw himself like he was silvery white, and he did not like it so much. He felt he looked like Elvis in the Las Vegas days. So he hopped down the beach where people would build fires every night. He rolled in the ashes and made himself black again so he could travel without the people pointing and laughing at him. And they would go about their business and leave him alone, which is how Raven liked it, except he was hungry when he was hungry, which was nearly always. So Raven didn't want to go into battle without an ally, so he visited the Kushtaka, the land otters. They were charged with watching over the waters and the forests for those who are near death from exposure or drowning. The Kushtaka saved these lost souls and turned them into their clan. Raven went and feasted with the Kushtaka and warned them of unseen enemies, fierce and powerful, like heat waves in the ocean. Raven demanded the attention of all. The land otters were spirit helpers to the shamans, so Raven knew this would help spread the news. Raven wasn't sure where to go next, and he stood on the beach looking over the water, and some people came up to him and said, "We think we found a magic box. Come with us." They walked towards the box, and Raven said, "I found the sun in a box, and I let it out." "Yes, Raven," they said. "And the moon and the stars? I found them in boxes too." "Yes, Raven, you are wonderful." They walked and walked to a place where a few people go. "Now," said Raven, "we'll find the magic." He opened the box, and it was empty. Nothing in it. He closed it and opened it again. Still nothing. The people looked at the box and saw letters Y-E-T-I on the side. "Oh," said Raven, "the Yeti magic is invisible magic. I'll do battle with this Yeti spirit, and I'll rip out its tongue, and I'll take its power. I'll hop in this box, you guys close the lid." As they stood there, nothing was really happening. They waited, and the tide came in. The box washed out to the ocean, and the people lit a fire on the beach so that Raven could find his way back. Meanwhile, in the box, Raven flapped his wings and squawked, and in the end, he defeated the Yeti spirit, even though it appeared from the outside nothing was happening at all. Raven defeated the spirit, and yet he was still in the box in the ocean, and he had things to do. So he made a hole in the ocean and went straight down. He walked along the bottom of the ocean to get back to the land because he knew it would be faster that way. When he got back onto the land, he went looking for Petrel, the bird who was an old fellow who lived in the woods by himself. Petrel was the guardian of a natural spring where all the fresh water came from. A long time ago, Raven stole water from Petrel, so he was wary of Raven's surprise visit. I have not come for your companionship, said Raven. Why tell the truth when I can tell a perfectly good lie? I'm just weary and sad about the state the world has gotten itself into while I slept. Raven regaled Petrel with stories of his adventure late into the night. Raven cried tears which flowed into the natural spring in hopes that it would help heal the water. Petrel made a bed for Raven to sleep in. You sleep here, Raven, and no tomfoolery. Raven assured him he did know who tomfoolery was, but he agreed that he should not be welcome to any gatherings. While Petrel slept, Raven spied the fog hat that Petrel tormented Raven with so many years ago. Raven did his trick from back in the day to Petrel by smearing dog feces on Petrel's behind. As the daylight trickled into the forest, Raven exclaimed, "Wake up, old man. Your immense fart last night was the calm before the storm. You have soiled yourself in the night." Indeed, Petrel was embarrassed and went to clean himself off. Raven took this chance and he grabbed the hat, not knowing what he might need it for, but quickly made his escape. Petrel looks back. "One day, Raven, one day," Raven heard as Petrel yells as Raven flies away. Raven still didn't know where he was going, but happened by a building. He asked aloud, "What is this building?" And a flicker answered, because flickers see everything, "It's an institute." The little bird told Raven, "What does it do?" "Nothing for a long time, but before, not long enough ago, some say, it was a place to send Indian children to make them white. Kill the Indian, save the man. In some cases, they would die. "I don't see any gravestones," said Raven. "They left the graves unmarked," said Flicker, "so no one would see them." All of a sudden, Raven felt the souls of the children grabbing for him. Raven and said, "Children, I am overcome with the sorrow for your condition. I will avenge you." Raven took the fog hat and the tongue of the Yeti spirit in his hands, and with the magic known only to Raven, he imbued the hat with the haze of sorrow and hid it in the garden next to the institute. Now when people walk by, the knowledge will take root in them and grow with somber intensity. People walk around to the other side of the mountain to avoid the meadow now. This is true. Raven went to call for his spirit helpers to build himself a sweat lodge. He sat in the lodge for hours and days, and when he was nearing unconsciousness, he had visions of light, blue lights dancing around the lodge. The spirit told him many things he should know. He ascended and ascended until Raven became all things. The love for all exuded from his whole spirit. He put on his fighting hat. He thought that now it was time to get serious. His hat was that of an eagle because he felt it might look more intimidating and the people might get back in line faster. It worked. As he walked around, children hid behind their mothers, and he was ready to do battle with any demon necessary. He went to a river that was frozen over. People look into the river and they see reflections, but they do not see the truth. They see only themselves. Water is a symbol of the subconscious, and the river was frozen along with the knowledge that the people once knew. Raven could see frozen fish. He could see frozen souls, individuals not moving, not flowing as they should. So Raven built an enormous bonfire on the edge of the river, flapped his wings, and created a powerful wind that blew hot air across the river, and the river melts. The river melts and the fish wiggle back to life. The souls of the spirit of the people began to flow again and order is restored. I found these on eBay, vintage signs. Raven is always hungry, and he has not feasted, and he has done many things at this point. The salmon chief came to him and said, "Thank you for restoring order to the world." "Yes, yes," said Raven. "I still have a lot of work to do with the snow crabs and berries." Raven was preoccupied because he was trying to catch a salmon. "You seem distracted," the salmon chief said. "I haven't eaten in a long time. I'd really like to feast on one of these salmons, but it seems they're too clever for me." "Ah," said the salmon chief, "you can take one any time. You must ask with your gratitude in your heart." "I see, Raven." "I see," said Raven. Raven gazed into the river and said, dear fishies, I love your scales, your eyes, your tail, but especially your integrity, your tenacious spirit, and your never quit mindset." Now a whole group of salmon had gathered in the river and were listening. One of the salmon threw himself up on the riverbank and wriggled in front of him. The salmon can never refuse a genuine, heartfelt request. "But take only what you can eat now, and more will come when you need it. If you're greedy, the salmon will stop listening to you." So Raven had to pee in the middle of the night. At his age, this was common. He had heard the cry of a wolf in the distance. Raven's mind flew away from him before he knew what he was doing. He was running full speed through the woods with the spirits of the animals coursing through him. Eagle, hawk, fox. Raven saw through the eyes of the wolf, and he knew that that was the spirit he would need to lead the people into the future world. So that's the first one. That was the subject of an exhibition I did earlier in the spring. And so for our second story, let's see that I'm not putting the people to sleep here. Raven opens the door to the sea, or the world according to Raven. Raven was flying through a terrible storm. He was wet and miserable and tired. He looked on the mountainside and saw a flickering light. He flew to that light. He entered the cave. There was a fire burning inside it, a warm, cozy fire. Raven started to dry himself off and relax. But soon a looming figure came through the opening of the cave. It was Bear. This was Bear's home, and he wasn't pleased to find a bird squatting in his house. Bear started chasing Raven around the fire. He lumbered around and lunged at Raven and Raven dodged his every attempt to catch him. Bear soon started to get tired and stopped chasing. Raven kept hopping side to side, twirling and crouching low, moving his wings in front of him. Bear laughed. "I'm not even chasing you anymore. Why are you running?" He goes, "I'm not running. I'm dancing." No one had ever seen dancing before. Bear was pleased with his new friend, and they talked about many great things. Raven was very hungry now and told the bear. Bear said with a grin, "Wait here." Bear came back with a salmon. He split it and he roasted it over a fire. Bear pricked his palm and squeezed, and some bear grease came out and helped cook the salmon to perfection. To Raven, it was the most delicious salmon he had ever had. "You've taught me much, and I've enjoyed this time with you." Bear's chest filled with pride, for no one ever thanked Bear for anything. Raven made his departure and headed back to his home. Raven fell asleep. When you wake up and you know you are asleep, that is when you are in Raven's world, and that is when you can truly see the world that is around you. It is like this when Raven sleeps sometimes. Sometimes a dream strikes him in the head like a canoe strikes the rock in the river. However, the rock in the river remains unmoved. Raven is perturbed. In the old stories, it was said that killer whales often came ashore and makes use of the land when no one is watching, building fires and camping on the beach. So Raven was not surprised when he saw a black canoe coming towards him. He was not surprised when the black canoe revealed itself as a killer whale who stepped out of the surf and approached him. "I'm here to broker a deal," said Killer Whale. "A truce," exclaimed Raven. "Yes, between you and your people," said Killer Whale. "My people will strike back and attack those motorboats if you don't stop. We can't live with what you've done to our ocean, the great Pacific garbage patch for one. But the assault is on many fronts. Microplastic, heavy metals, warming trends is truly a desecration of our habitat. And can we talk about how you and your people destroy the salmon, our main source of food?" Raven looked surprised. "Me? That isn't me. People are doing that." "Yes, your people are the heinous troops you employ against us." "They're not my people. I hardly know them. I have very little to do with them." "It's true. I have a person on my mother's side. I'm half person on my mother's side, but that doesn't mean that I'm a chronic environmental abuser." "If you're not helping, you're hurting," Killer Whale said. "It's true," "Is that true?" wondered Raven. "Do we live in such a world? Have we become so binary we can't actively help? If we're not actively helping, are we hurting?" Either all that thinking or the bump from the canoe made Raven's head hurt. Raven flew away from the beach feeling consternated. He felt somehow that the killer whale had touched on a greater truth, though he wasn't sure what the truth was or if it was true at all. He encountered an eagle who had a salmon in its talons. Raven asked Eagle, "Is it true that if one is not helping, one is hurting?" "I'm sorry, I don't want to be. If you want to help me with the salmon, you can join me in the feast. They tell me you're always hungry. Otherwise, you're hurting my ability to have a good meal. And if you're not helping me escape," Salmon added, "you're deliberately hurting. Just saying." It was ironic that Raven's moment of crisis, he could encounter another creature in crisis. It was the land otter man changing from a man into a land otter before his very eyes. The Kushtaka, the shape-shifting spirit who make their homes in the forest and scavenge for lost souls. The process was a bit disastrous for Raven, so he distasteful for Raven, so he averted his eyes until the transformation had completed. Standing before Raven was a newly transformed land otter. Raven quizzed the Kushtaka on the chicken and egg theory, trying to add to his field of study, including the helping hurting concept. After talking in circles for a long time, Raven proclaimed, "You're a master of the metaphysical. I appreciate you." Before traveling on, Land Otter Man felt his chest swell with pride, for nobody ever appreciated him for anything. Raven went to a kelp forest beneath the waves. Raven used a saw made of teeth to cut into the kelp bulb and discovered a ladder inside that led to the bottom of the ocean. Raven climbed down the ladder to the killer whale village on the ocean floor. It looked like a human village with a longhouse and killer whales swimming around like people strolling. Raven went inside the longhouse and saw the supernatural killer whale, who was an albino. Indigenous people know that albino animals are considered spirit animals with supernatural powers. The supernatural killer whale said, "What brings you to the bottom of the ocean?" Raven replied, "After further reflection, I've decided that your problems lie outside my purview. I think you have a false idea about me and my powers, and I may or may not have. I think you should think of me more of a first mover. Start the ball rolling on things, and those balls roll wherever they wish. And should those balls roll over things and break them or crush them flat, well, balls are no longer in my control. They're so ipso facto. I bear no responsibility, and therefore cannot be expected to fix those things that have smashed flat or broken. I just want to state for the record that when I say balls, you can substitute people or humans. You created people, Killer Whale, said Killer Whale, but they're their own actors, protested Raven. I have given them free will. They keep searching, Raven, said Killer Whale. You'll get there. So Raven left. He went back to a forest. Raven went back to a forest and found a small hut with smoke coming out of it. He went closer and stepped inside. He encountered a shaman dressed in shaman's garb, a skirt made of cedar strips, a tattered smock of deer hide, and a crown of bear claws. He was dancing and shaking a rattle. Raven immediately wondered if word had spread of his new invention called dancing, or if he had unknowingly tapped into something universal, or if he was in a time warp. The shaman donned the trance mask and continued. Raven didn't care so much for the mask because it's hard to know what's going on with an individual when you can't get a cue from the expressions. It kind of creeped him out. The shaman danced closer to Raven and he could see the life in the shaman's eyeballs, but nowhere else. The shaman removed the mask and placed it on Raven's face, and Raven fell under the power of the mask. The shamanic magic is nothing to be trifled with. It is well known that the uninitiated, when attempting to harness the power of the spirits, is often driven mad or worse. The shaman handed the powerful rattle depicting an oyster catcher covering the eyes of a hawk, suggesting that not all things are to be seen with the eyes. Thusly, thrust into a shamanic state, thrust into a trance not of his own making, Raven began to dance. The women who have been taken, who have been drugged, beaten, and sold, who have been raped and murdered, who have vanished from the earth without a trace, without a care, the missing, the murdered, come forward and call for Raven. They need Raven's help. These are the things the Raven saw when he was in a trance, all of them stepping from the forest, walking towards him, calling him. They came out of the woods and surrounded Raven so he would remember them, so he could remember that they were his family, so that he could know that our connection to each other may be torn but is never severed. All at the same time, in different places in our existential trajectories, the pain felt by one will eventually be felt by all. In Tlingit culture, there are fewer serious transgressions as gossip because it creates instability within the community. Today, we're a culture that thrives on gossip. In the old days, if one clan member wronged someone from a different clan, the entire clan must stand for the transgressor, and payment was offered and apologies were made. The Tlingit knew that the power of words and how they knew of the power of words and how it makes people feel. Today, words allow us to communicate with each other, and words can be full of lies. Words used to deceive and mislead. Words convince you that what you're doing is right or wrong, good or bad. Raven was growing tired of all the chatter in the world and all the manipulations and information. Raven had an idea: I'll steal all the words. Raven flew along until he found a man who was speaking with words. I'm stealing your words so you can do no harm. He grabbed the man's tongue with his beak and he pulled. The man's tongue stretched, but it did not break off. The raven pulled and the man screamed. And the words? The words were not in the man's mouth as Raven had thought, so Raven grew tired, gave up, and left the man stunned on the beach. Raven returned home, a storm blowing hard. He returned to his nest. He discovered a very annoying thing waiting for him, a bird soaked to the bone, freezing and afraid. And at first, Raven was irritated by this uninvited guest. He was about to push the little bird out of the nest, and then he remembered his own experience when he sought refuge in the bear's cave. Raven said nothing. He went to his fire pit and lit a fire. Raven left and the little bird started to warm itself by the fire. When Raven returned, he had a little trout, not quite big enough to be plenty, but some food nonetheless. He placed the fish on the fire and he poked his foot with his beak and he squeezed until little raven grease came out of his foot and it cooked the fish to perfection. Raven realized that it doesn't matter how much you have, but what you have can mean a lot to someone else. Raven gathered his powers and embraced the people, assuring them that he is a spirit that surrounds them and listens to the world and tells people the stories of what's happening in our current world today. Raven is keen and resourceful, he's selfish, he's confident, he's boastful and demanding. He dreams things into his existence. He represents every facet of human behavior. And now Raven is off to another adventure. I got some more. Yeah, so if so I thank you for bearing with me on that. It's a few more times I'll get it down. But the story itself is actually much more nuanced, and there's a lot more detail that goes into it. And so Garth and I have a great, so we're both excited about this process, and so we're going to continue working on these things. I just wanted to show a couple of highlights of stuff that I've been doing since last year. Well, I did get to go to Venice, which was incredible to go and visit some old colleagues and friends. This is Lino Tagliapietra, who's the Italian master that I learned from. He just turned 90 years old 2 days ago, and his wife Lena, incredible people, brought my family there to Venice. This happened while I wasn't around. This is the Pilchuck Glass School, but the Northern Lights visited the Washington State and put on an incredible show. And so I after Venice, I went to Italy, to the Czech Republic to work with this guy. So to talk a little bit about these upcoming collaborations I have going on. This is Martin Janicki, incredible glass sculptor from Czech Republic. This is some of his work that he does, amazing details. Some of these pieces take, 20, 30 hours to make. So we started to work on a series of pieces based on Native American faces. So this is actually Princess Angeline, the Chief Seattle's daughter. And then this was like Chief Seattle. So these are sculpted forms that are really, really complex. So we're working on a body of work. And this is a friend of mine who's actually has an exhibition at the IAI Museum. Thomas Kolbengtsson is the Arctic Highway exhibition there. Yeah, is he here? There he is. Okay, so yeah, anyway, he was teaching me about doing screen printing, working with fire on enamels. So these are a couple of things we worked on. And then another one I'm working on with Spike Mafford, who's a photographer who I went to elementary school with, and we took different paths of art. So he's an established art photographer. So we're going to work on these pieces using my work in different settings, and we're going to try to tie in the whole idea of Tlingit place names, stories, language, art, and then also bring awareness to the desecration of the environment and the loss of all these beautiful places. So these large photos that we want to blow up to 30 feet by about 10 feet tall. Last year I released a book kind of talking about my creative process. This was one that I wrote and published with Minor Matters Books. And then it's kind of back into the performing arts, which some of you might know. I kind of moonlight as a musician. I like to play. I have a 10-piece band. We play native music that is influenced by native concepts and culture. But I did this with my friends here. This was commissioned for the Music of Remembrance. And little performance. I just did the visuals, but I'm also currently working on set design for Sleeping Beauty, which is going to open the Pacific Northwest Ballet January 29th. And so these are some of the preliminary, sketches that we're working on. As of course, Sleeping Beauty pricks her finger and falls asleep for 100 years, and so these are the vines that are sort of overgrowing, and elements of my work, design work throughout. So some of these pieces, and this is my band playing different festivals. We got to play the big sports arena. We were the kind of the entertainment between the second and third period on the hockey game. But anyway, it felt like we were in a big arena, like where I always felt I should be. And then we also did an incredible, it was a indigenous music festival up in Juneau, Alaska. So that was about 30 indigenous artists from all across Canada and the US. Amazing. And we released our 5th album as a band. Sometimes I go to a Mariners game. So let's see, this was a public art. So I've also been navigating into public art. This was a piece I put up at the Microsoft campus, and it's actually six of these that are mounted up on poles. And then this is another piece of public art that was installed this past year. And then finally, this was a sound transit station, light rail running up into Linwood, Washington. And so working with big printed panels of glass. So thank you.